Despite the global film market rapidly growing around the world in places such as Bollywood in India and Nollywood in Nigeria, and Nigeria actually is the technically the largest film market because they produce the most films, but the success of those films still doesn't even compare to the success of Hollywood internationally. For many, many years, people in Europe and other countries have been constantly competing with Hollywood to try to produce films, but Hollywood still surpasses all of them. And why this happened is Hollywood, the history of it, Hollywood had the most, um, produced the most films and had the biggest global presence, and they control the distribution systems. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing, the dominance of Hollywood having control of all the distribution systems, with like media conglomerates all growing together and becoming pretty much virtually almost one company. It's going to be very, very, very hard for any other company in any other country to actually compare. There are a few exceptions to this rule, like the film that was internationally produced, Slumdog Millionaire, which won an Academy Award. However, people in America, which is actually the world's largest film-going audience in the world, only will watch one foreign film a year because they like more of the same. And actually, Hollywood's dominance around the world has grown. And even countries like Russia and China and Japan, who kind of resisted Hollywood initially, they just keep going to movies more than ever now. Ticket sales are up. Hollywood's been making the most money that they ever have since a long time ago. So, like in 2009, Hollywood grossed a ton of money globally. As far as Hollywood being controlling the cultural industries of the world, they kind of do have a pretty big impact. Most of the world has adopted a lot of Western ways because of the films that Hollywood exports, and but cultures still have maintained some of their individuality. So Hollywood's still basically being the film capital and media distributor of the world. It still hasn't had a huge negative impact like Robert McChesney seems to think. But he is right about Hollywood completely being just the big giant and having virtually no competition. I mean, there are going to be foreign films, there's going to be independent films that do well, but as far as taking over the big dominant empire and the commodities that Hollywood has created and made its reputation grow, we're not really going anywhere as far as the American film market. Avatar is the top grossing film of all time, and I mean, partially this is due to the 3D ticket sales are a lot more expensive, but around the world, everyone in every country pretty much has seen this movie, and it centers around a white male who goes in and he saves other people of other nationalities. So, I mean, in a way, Hollywood hasn't really diversified their content around the world. There's been no other time that has been more, the audience of movies have been more thirsty for more movies. Movie attendance is up like at least 10% internationally, and most of the films that are being watched and a part of the success are from Hollywood, and there's very few from tiny film houses. Although there are people who are trying, there's other countries that are trying to build their own film markets, like in the Middle East and China. And I mean, Japan has a pretty good film market, and China does too, but they're trying to build and expand to become more like Hollywood. But until Hollywood loses control of their huge international distribution chain that they have, it's going to be really hard for anyone to compete.